Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Actor James Madio joins the star-studded TV tribute American Valor tonight to celebrate Veterans Day. I spoke to Madio about the real-life military heroes honored on the TV special, as well as his role on HBO's Band of Brothers, which remains arguably the best TV miniseries ever made. James Madio, hey, thank you so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now we're talking because today, obviously for Veterans Day, we are celebrating all of the nation's veterans and all those brave troops that have served for us over the years. And it's going to be with a special broadcast called American Valor, and you will be one of the celebrities taking part in this. Where was this thing filmed? I know it airs today, but you pre-taped it here in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yes, we did. We pre-taped it last week. Rob Riggle hosted. He did an amazing job. What a guy, what a career. And we were in Washington, D.C., I believe at the Omni Hotel.
Yeah, it was at the Omni Hotel. And where can folks watch it today?
You could actually watch it on numerous networks. I believe ABC, NBC, FN, the Armed Forces Network, that would be broadcasting it on all the American bases all over the world. I believe Fox as well has it. So yeah, it broadcasts all around and on a lot of networks.
Awesome. Yeah, I always love that in addition to the quote regular civilians watching on the networks, I love that they stream it on the Armed Services Network too, because let's face it, those are the folks that should get to watch this thing the most. Not to mention the veterans watching from home.
Absolutely.
So obviously the main stars of this are going to be the actual veterans that we highlight. But in addition to that, you're a Hollywood guy yourself. So in addition, there's some really big Hollywood celebrities, and many of them have tie-ins, with military themed movies and shows and stuff. So who else is going to be on the program with you?
Well, absolutely. First off, the main thing is what you said is the real celebrities are the heroes, are the men and women who are being awarded here tonight. But we have Hollywood has joined us. We got, I believe Bradley Cooper will be saying some wonderful remarks. He started American Sniper. Tom Cruise jumps on and says some beautiful words. Chris Pratt will be speaking as well. As we all know, Zero Dark 30. Got Chris Pine, Edward Norton, Hilary Swank. It's just star-studded, and hosted by Rob Riggle, who does a terrific job as well.
All right, cool. So in addition to that, we're going to salute some of the veterans too, right? I see some of the profiles on the website. Do you know any of their personal stories offhand?
I do. I know Vince Speranza, who I actually give the award to. And Vince has got a incredible story. But yeah, I've met Vince a few times. Vince Speranza, yeah.
Could you share a little of his story right now? I know he was in the 101st Airborne Division, or at Bastogne and Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah. It's 101st Airborne, 501st, yeah. So yes, one of the heroes joining us is a World War II hero called, his name is Vince Speranza. A really, really great guy. I've met him on numerous occasions. He was with the 101st Airborne Division, the 501st 3rd Battalion H Company, and he served as a machine gunner. And I believe he's 96 years old today. Vince fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and during the Battle of the Bulge, Vince supposedly in Bastogne found a blown out tavern, like a bar. The only thing working was the beer. The keg was the only thing working. So what he did was he took his helmet off, he filled up his helmet with that beer, ran it back to the guys, gave them all beer, and did that, I believe, a few times. What happened was Vince went back years and years ago after the war, and he shows up in Bastogne, and there was this story going around about this young soldier from World War II who ran back and forth from this tavern, giving his the 101st Airborne, giving him beer
That's
And when he
awesome.
got there, so he saw all these tourists drinking out of the helmet, and he came forward and supposedly said, "That was me. I was the guy who did all this." So then they like named a beer after him, and it's called Nuts. So when you go to Bastogne, right in Bastogne, it's a Cafe Nuts, and you could drink Vince's beer. And not only that, Vince is like decorated in the 101st Airborne Museum in Bastogne, where there is actually a wax figure of himself. So he's just become, this global figure. But he's a hell of a guy, sharp as a tack, and I'm honored and incredibly humbled to give him an award today. So I'm excited about that.
Wow, that is such a great story, and the fact you can still go to Bastogne and see, he's sort of he's a folk hero there now for his beer and military service. That's amazing. That's so cool.
Right,
Well,
right.
that
So
is that obviously the segue writes itself. Thank you so much, because when I hear Bastogne, I immediately think of those amazing scenes in Band of Brothers, the miniseries that was on HBO. But I think we are I think this is the 30th anniversary of Stephen Ambrose's book of Band of Brothers, and then obviously the miniseries came out early 2001 or something. Talk about how off the heels of Saving Private Ryan in '98, then comes Band of Brothers with Spielberg and Tom Hanks sort of coming together, executive producing it after Private Ryan. Talk about how it was just, man, those two works together, Private Ryan and Band of Brothers, to me, I think it's like the most realistic, gripping World War II stuff that's ever been made. But I mean, do you agree? I mean, it's just phenomenal filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, it's dedication. It's making sure you do it right. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's those two, between Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers. That's cinematic history and storytelling of the World War II, and just trying to capture just a little bit, just a fraction of what maybe these guys went through. Because look, I spent a lot of time with a lot of the veterans of the 101st and Easy Company in particular, and even Frank Perconti, the guy I portrayed. And it's never going to be exactly what they went through, and we know that. We know that. But if we could show America and the world what this generation went through, and pass that legacy and those stories on to the youngest generation and the next generation, so we never forget, I think that's the importance, and I think that's what Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers, among a whole lot of other things, have done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And talk about how in Band of Brothers, how I thought one of the coolest pieces of that was getting to hear the interviews with the actual veterans that sort of set up the episode.
Right.
They talk about what happened at that chapter of the story. It kind of intercuts the narrative with the actual real life stories. How important do you think was that? I mean, that to me, that makes it stand out from a lot of the other war material.
Well, it's an incredible segue, opening, powerful opening to all the episodes. Is actually hearing from the veterans who were there and lived it. And you got to give kudos to Tom Hanks and Spielberg and Tony Toh and all the creative executives over there who knew that was going to work as a segue into the episode. So those guys talking about this many years later and dedicating their time after putting this away for 60, 70 years and never speaking of it, to come out and, you were kind of afraid that you were opening up these old wounds. I say it a lot. These guys were not ready for this. They were in their legacy years. They were enjoying themselves. And then you have some actor, producer, director calling you and wanting some detailed information of how to the left of you or the right of you had potentially gotten killed, and how you felt about that. I can't imagine that job and talking to them. I know when I first contacted Frank Perconti, I was very worried about that. I didn't know how he was going to be. Was he going to accept me? But thankfully, Frank was very open. We got along really well. We spent a lot of time together. We've traveled Europe together. We went back to Bastogne and looked for his foxhole. We went to Foy, where he was shot in his butt, where he was wounded.
Directly in the
And
buttocks, as Forrest would say.
yeah, you got
That's
hit in the butt.
that's $1 million wound, but I ain't seen a nickel of that money.
Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, these guys, it's just to be a part of it was a small part of it. Was career changing, obviously, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like that's such a good point you make that was a generation that they didn't talk about it. They came home, and from the war, and had the baby boomers and just went on living life. But a lot of them just didn't want to talk about it. It was too hard. And here we are on this gripping television series, sharing those stories. Those interviews are just. It's so amazing. And then in terms of like, the dramatization of it that you guys had to do, talk about the, not only yourself, but the cast that you got to work with. And oh my God, like, I mean, I know, Damian Lewis as Winters, was first comes to mind, but you get all these other actors like, Ron Livingston was known for like Office Space, but here he is playing a serious, Lewis Nixon or David Schwimmer as Ross and Friends. And here he is this completely different role, and Donnie Wahlberg, and the list goes on and on, but like talk at Scott Grimes, but talk about how, you were just surrounded by just like an all-star cast that, it's unrivaled in cast in shows. Like, I don't think you could find a better cast around.
Well, yes. And we have to thank Meg Lieberman, who casted that, for, she is the person, she is all of our adopted mother. It was a phenomenal cast. Look, I got ask this question a lot, and I could take up hours upon hours about talking about my admiration for the other actors in our cast and our crew with this project. Whatever they did by design. I work with the World War II Museum quite a bit, and I get to travel, and I say the story of our boot camp, and the producers put us through a boot camp. Now it's an actor's boot camp, so anybody who served, I always like to say, put your earmuffs on. This is us as actors sort of doing a boot camp. They put us through a boot camp, and it was pretty rigorous, Jason. We would do a lot, breaking down our weapons, doing maneuvers, marching. You had night duty, tank maneuvers, everything you can imagine in a 16 to 17 hour day, and sometimes more. And they broke you down. And you recognize that you needed the person to the left of you and the right of you in order to get through this boot camp. And that's where we all got to know each other. We all called each other by characters' names. I didn't know some of the names of these people till years later.
That's wild.
I had no idea what some of the names are.
Right.
Now, I didn't know Damian Lewis, Ron Livingston. I didn't know, heard of them. A lot of these guys were not the big name that they are today.
Right.
For the most part.
This helped make them.
Band of Brothers it did. It had an incredible cast, an amazing career. But these guys are my brothers. I would do anything for them. We still have our reunion once a year at Bull's house. That's just us actors, and we tell our stories about acting and how we got through it, and some funny stories. And obviously, over the years, these stories have grown to mammoth proportions where the fish got bigger and bigger and bigger each time the story is told. But that's us just drinking a few beers, enjoying ourselves. We know what we've done. We know what we've created in help honoring those men, and we are all very proud of it, extremely proud of it, and we wear it on our sleeve properly.
Where did you say the annual reunion is? Bull's house? Where?
Our annual Band of Brothers reunion typically takes place at Bull Randleman's house, Michael Cutlitz. Played Bull Randleman. We just had our 20th reunion at the World War II Museum, that is Symposium, which was really, really cool.
Wow, that is really at what museum?
The World War II Museum in New Orleans.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's all intertwined at this point. Like we think of the World War II history and the images from your show comes to mind. Now, do you, and by the way, we're talking about this as if everyone has seen it, but oh my God, if you've got this far in the interview and you haven't seen Band of Brothers, seriously, like stop what you're doing, hit pause on this podcast or whatever and go watch it. I mean, it is quintessential stuff. Do you have a personal favorite episode that you think is the finest of the 10?
That is a good question. Look, I'm biased to the show, not because I'm in it. I love the importance of it. All of those guys I've come to know for 20 years. We've, babysat kids, who lived in whose houses, who got married on property, all of that stuff, who's been in each other's movies, who works together. It's that type of camaraderie. So when I watch it, I just love every one of them because I love everybody's performance. If I had to choose, the Bastogne episode really stands out.
Yeah.
With the medic Doc Rowe, played by Shane Taylor. But the one I would say is episode 9 with the concentration camps. I think a lot of these young men knew they were fighting for something, but when they stumbled upon the concentration camps, I think they recognized, hence the title of the 9th episode is Why We Fight, or Why We're Fighting. So,
you know what?
Episode 9, because it was also a tough episode, because we had a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, hard work doing Band of Brothers. And then when episode 9 came along, a lot of the fun sort of came to reality and realized, the importance of the show. So yeah, and plus the sets and the concentration camp victims and the bodies and everything, just the way the production had set designed that and set decorated that, it was mind blowing how they did that. So speechless, really speechless.
It's so funny that you said that because that's the episode I was going to name. I mean, I remember I watched the whole thing with my dad, obviously a huge World War II buff, and Bastogne, the wintry images and all that stuff. Like, all those episodes are great. But the one that I was going to say was Why We Fight, the penultimate episode 9, because it's like you're watching Saving Private Ryan for 8 episodes, and then suddenly you get a Schindler's List in there that just knocks you out. And then you wrap it all up in points in episode 10. But with the violin in the beginning, right? The violin in the beginning and end, right?
It was wonderful. But David Frankel directed that, actually had family on, I believe on both ends, his mother and father's side, who were in concentration camps.
Oh, wow.
So, it's a very, very powerful episode.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, he was born in New York City, but his Jewish family, so his ancestors lived it. So wow.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we could sit here and talk Band of Brothers all day, and of course, and then it inspired the Pacific later, that series that would talk about
right.
The other theater of war. But yeah, I mean, if you think what is it, VE Day, you think of Band of Brothers, and VJ Day, you think Pacific. You guys kind of covered the whole gamut there. Well, anyway, we can't rave about it enough. It is like arguably the greatest TV series ever. People need to rank it towards the top of their lists whenever they make those lists. But I want to ask really quick about you, a little more about your career, because I don't want to just say all you've ever done is Band of Brothers. You've done a lot of stuff. So tell me, long before playing Frank Perconte, tell me about where you grew up. You were born in the Bronx in 1975. So tell me, what sort of stuff did you watch growing up, and how'd you get into acting?
Wow, I mean, so I got into acting at like 13, 14 years old. Outgrew me. I'm not the biggest guy, and I'm getting into a lot of trouble on the streets of the Bronx. And my father's friend was dating a woman who represented child actors. And I guess they sat down to eat, and my father said, "I don't know what to do with my son." He goes, "Well, why don't you meet this woman I'm dating, and maybe he wants to act." I went downtown and I met her, and then I had an audition for the movie Hook as a lost boy. And I auditioned for that a few times, and then they finally flew me out from the Bronx to Los Angeles to be a lost boy in Hook. And just from there, I played Dustin Hoffman's son in a movie called Hero, and then a couple of years later, I did sort of really indie, darling, festival-driven movie called The Basketball Diaries with Leonardo DiCaprio
Of course.
and Mark Wahlberg, and just a hell of a cast. A great, great movie if you haven't seen it. And then a lot of television, couple independents, and Band of Brothers, and you know. And then I'm on a show right now, or it kind of ended. It's called The Offer, that premieres on Paramount, The Making of the Godfather. And I produce, write projects of my own as well. So, you know, I stay busy. I've been grandfathered into this industry, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
I love it. And so wild. I mean, we're talking Band of Brothers and Spielberg executive producing it, but it's so wild. You got started on a Spielberg movie with Hook. That's wild. A Lost Boy. Did you? So if I say Rufio, Rufio, you can end it by saying Rufio.
Well, I go Rufio. I say Bangarang, whatever one you want me to say.
Then I guess the Dustin Hoffman
the
connection.
funny thing, well, Dustin Hoffman took me off the set of Hook and brought me to his trailer and having meet the producers of that film. And he was pitching me to be his son.
Wow.
I remember him taking my helmet off because that was when we were filming the battle scenes with the Lost Boys against the Pride. He took my helmet off and was fixing my hair to make me look like him. And was telling him, come on, this kid's great. Let's put him in the movie. So I got one audition and I got two studio films. The funny thing is when I auditioned for Band of Brothers, I happened to be the first one there because I had one of the early appointments. And I'm sitting outside the front door, just nervous as anything. And Spielberg was walking up, I believe, with Gary Getzman. And I held the door open for him. I see him coming. And he was in mid-conversation with Gary. And he just stops mid-conversation and he goes to thank me to hold the door open. And then he recognizes me 10 years later. Because I did Hook when I was 13, 14.
He recognized you as a Lost Boy? He actually recognized you. That's so cool.
He says, hey, no, that's what he said to me. He goes, hey, my Lost Boy, it's good to see you. You know, I'll be happy to see you up there, he told me. And I was like, oh, yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to it. It's an amazing project. Hopefully it goes my way. And he goes, all right, I'll see you up there. Do great things. And I was like, oh, my God, Spielberg remembered me. So it was great when I went into the audition minutes later because all that anxiety was off my shoulders of, well, would he remember me? Is Steven going to be there? You know, that stuff. So, yeah, timing sometimes is everything.
Oh, absolutely. That is a cool story not arguably, the most famous director of all time, maybe Hitchcock and him, but you ask someone on the street, name a director, they'll say Steven Spielberg, and he remembered you. That's awesome. You've been generous with your time. Before we run, you mentioned something that I am dying to talk to you about, The Offer. I ate that show up. I remember, because I'm a huge fan of The Godfather, obviously, and the making of it and all that. But you know, when that dropped on Paramount Plus, I was like, okay, you know, I'm going to review these episodes. And I just remember hitting next. Like I had to keep watching it.
Right.
Tell me about just that experience. You played what? You were part of in like the gangster sort of scenes, right? Like the Columbo Carmine.
Right. I played Carmine. I played Columbo's right-hand man. I don't want to give too much away if nobody's watching it.
Sure.
But Dexter Fletcher, the executive producer and director on it, he was Johnny Martin in Band of Brothers. So he called me and was like, Jim, you're the most Italian guy I know. I'm doing a television show based on The Godfather, and I want you to be in it. And I was just blown away because I'm a huge Godfather fan as well. I mean, who is not? It's sort of what I've always went back and watched as an actor to get motivated. And they cast me as Carmine, and it was a great series. But I got to be honest, I didn't read all the scripts. I just kind of read my parts, and normally I don't do that. But Jason, it goes back to what you were saying. All these little nuggets of how it got made and why it got made and what fell through the cracks and all these stories about The Godfather and the making of it just blew my mind. And I think that's what the law was, to watching it, keep watching it, and watch the next episode and binge watch it. She's like, wait a minute, this didn't happen. Is this really real with the gangsters and Frank Sinatra and Evans and Coppola and Puzo and all of this? Is it really true? But filming it was amazing because I'm thrown back in time. I'm wearing these great outfits. I'm playing, a mafia boss, and I'm working with some of the people that I've always wanted to work with, which is Dexter Fletcher, who I worked with in Band of Brothers, but it was years. Nikki Toscano, who was the EP on this. All the actors, Giovanni Ribisi and
who was in Private Ryan. There's so many tie-ins.
who was in Private Ryan, of course. But yeah, a great show. I had a fun time on that, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, recommend it to anyone. I mean, Miles Teller as Albert Ruddy and Matthew Good as Robert Evans. That's just a delicious performance. He's so good.
You couldn't take your eyes off him, man. Talk about someone who's gone for it. He was fantastic.
I know. And then just Dan Fogler as Coppola, and then Patrick Gallo as Puzo. I mean, it's we'd be here all day. I just loved it. It was like I don't want to say guilty pleasure, because that's reduced. It almost sounds demeaning, because I loved the show, but it was like,
no, you can say that. Come on, you can say it.
I had to just keep watching it. Hey, thank you so much for joining us, and it's been quite a career so far since the Lost Boys, but a lot left to go. What do we got? Anything good coming up next we want to tease?
Yes, I just wrapped up called The Featherweight. It's based on the great featherweight Willie Pep in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So we just wrapped that up. It's a boxing movie. It's an independent art house. So I helped produce it, and I starred as Willie Pep. So I had to get into boxing shape and Willie Pep shape. But there's some good things on the horizon for that. We just submitted to the Sundance Film Festival and also submitted to Berlin. So we're waiting to hear back on that.
All right. See, the Willie Pep story, the world featherweight champion, twice between 1942 and 1950, right? That's
right. We fall upon Willie in 1965 after his retirement. He's on his fourth wife. He's got no money. His son is dealing with a drug abuse problem. His father's not well and had a stroke. He's got no money. He's back living with his parents. His wife is 20 years old and Willie's 46. So, she's thinking about leaving him. So he makes a comeback to the ring after being retired, and he was already elected to the Hall of Fame. So he was already in the Hall of Fame. And he comes back and wins another 10 fights. And in 1965, the Willie Pep comeback story was, I believe, one of the New York Times top 10 human interest story of that year. But yeah, he's a remarkable guy. Survived, broke his neck and back in a plane crash when he was champion of the world, was told he'd never fight again, came back and won another 100 fights in his career. And, Willie owns all the boxing records as far as rounds. He's fought 229 wins and 11 losses, one draw, I believe. So he's gone down as one of the greatest fighters of all time. And if you talk to true fighting aficionados, even like Bert Sugar and Angelo Dundee, they would all say that the best fighter, pure fighter, boxer, is Willie Pep because of his footwork.
Pound for pound, right?
Pound for pound, Willie Pep. Because, you got to remember, he fought every 3 weeks for 10, 15 years, 15 rounds, because he wasn't a knockout artist.
Man.
So what made him special was his footwork inside the ring. But unfortunately, outside the ring, he couldn't avoid the daily punches of everyday life between wife and kids and marriage and family and money and temptation. So really cool story. And I think our spin on it and our approach to the boxing genre is different, is very refreshing. So yeah, we are hoping big things for Willie Pep.
Wow. Sounds like, you get sort of that Raging Bull-esque in the ring versus outside the ring drama, but in a new way. That's going to be cool. So it's called Pep. Everyone look for that. And it's co-starring Ron Livingston. And there's our Band of Brothers tie-in. And now we're back to American Valor, bringing it full circle. That's the best I can do. No, seriously, it was. Thank you so much for that long detour into Hollywood. I'm a movie guy, I love it. But yes, it is all about the veterans here on Veterans Day. So everyone watch American Valor. A salute to our troops. It's going to be today on ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC. You can watch it everywhere. So hey, thank you so much for doing this. This was so much fun.
Well, thank you, and a big thank you to our men and women who've served. Your work and your dedication, your bravery doesn't go unnoticed here in America, and we celebrate you today. We celebrate you every day, particularly today, and we thank you for your service from me and my family.
Awesome. James Matteo, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you.
This has been fantastic. I really, really appreciate your time.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, Jason. You have a good one, brother.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.
Explain your DNA on 10 cases, man.
You're inside the police interrogation room with the alleged Potomac River rapist.
I'm not guilty on any of this stuff.
So calm, so reasonable. Could this be the man who terrorized women for 9 years before murdering a brilliant scientist 2 decades ago? Experience one of the most fascinating true crime podcasts available. Join crime reporter Paul Wagner for Unknown Subject, Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare series. Search American Nightmare Podcast on all podcast platforms.
I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.